It's a brand new year. And Nathan, what I want to do is I want to decide right now, right here, what is the best off-road truck of the year?
For 2023.
Yes.
That's my jam. That's the stuff I love, and that is what I thrive for.
I'm sorry, I was probably a little bit intense there, but really what I want to do. So if you remember, in episode 83 of our Talking Trucks podcast, TFL Talkin Trucks, is we created what I called the pyramid.
Yeah.
And this is based on one of the questions that came in from you guys, the listeners and viewers, is there's too much going on in the world of trucks as far as off-road packages, off-road settings, off-road components and equipment. How do you decide on what truck to buy? So we built a pyramid with kind of at the bottom of the pyramid, kind of the more basic off-road packages, and we worked all the way up to the extreme TRX.
That is correct. And also, I wanted to create an investment pyramid as well, but for some reason, Roman shut that down.
Oh, that's a bad term.
I know, isn't that crazy? And I was trying to fund, my next vacation, which I want to get to in a second.
This is not
too,
a scheme. No.
Scheme, that's an ugly word.
No.
But the whole point of this, and I really liked when we did that, by the way, I did that with you, we were able to talk to you guys about the fact that there are a lot of packages out there that make trucks from absolute basic utility vehicles all the way up to serious off-road toys and everything in between. And I think there's been a little bit of confusion about where trucks lie. And now that we have even more to deal with in terms of off-roading, the fact that we have this list and we're putting it together means that you guys will be able to, at a glance, or in this case, at a listen, figure out, okay, I don't really need a $98,000 truck to do what I basically need to do off-road. I can settle for something half the price, and hopefully we'll be able to cover that.
Yeah, and the beautiful thing is, as we talk through this, we've driven basically every truck. Well, maybe like Raptor R, I was really fortunate to drive, but Roman and you have not driven yet.
Yeah, I hate you. Yes, yes, you're
but
right.
I can give you maybe a little bit of a taste of what the Raptor R is. And so we've had new trucks since last time we did this. Obviously, AT4X is kind of a new brand from GM. We have Raptor R from Ford. We have Rivian is now a player because they have quite a capable off-road system.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
So how do we do this?
Well, when we start this, I think what we do is we start from the bottom and work our way up. So we have, according to Andre, 6 levels of, all the way down from your basic off-road package, like a C71, all the way up to, the very top off-road trucks, which are pretty obvious, TRX and whatnot. So we're going to hit that. But before we do, we got a couple things, a little bit of business to take care of. Now, first of all, Andre.
Yeah?
I just got back from vacation. I don't take vacations very often, as you know.
Well, if you listened to our podcast last time, Roman was here, and we talked about which trucks we sold and bought.
Yeah.
So how was your vacation?
Wow, that's an entry.
Sorry.
No, that's all right. My vacation was really good. I took my family to Disneyland.
Okay.
And I had, what car I got from Nissan? Thank you, by the way. The Nissan Kicks.
Oh,
I wanted to get
the little Kicks.
Yeah, the little tiny thing for one family to use for a 1-week vacation. And I was able to get all my luggage in there. But what I really wanted to get my hands on was a Nissan truck, like a Titan or a Frontier. But I'm in Los Angeles, and so it made sense to have something with a trunk, and that's kind of why this was selected.
Something smaller, something more efficient, probably.
Yeah, they got amazing mileage, and I was really happy because gas is crazy there. So while I was there, I wanted to tell you, I actually ate one of the best hamburgers I've ever had in my life. It was really good.
Okay, where is this?
So the place is called the Burger Lounge. It's actually a small chain. There's a couple of these. The Burger Lounge is in Santa Monica. The general manager is actually a fan.
No way.
He loves TFL Truck.
Wow.
Yeah, and I'm stuffing my face with this amazing burger, and there's like all these different types. Typical California, like you can get one that's veggie,
vegan,
and all that, but you can also get like a proper, meat burger, and it was really freaking good. I couldn't believe how good it was. Anyway, so shout out to Burger Lounge because that was about the best damn burger I've ever had, and the assistant manager there, or the general manager, Amazing guy, big fan of TFL
Well,
Truck.
thank you for watching and listening.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But while I was out there,
Yes?
something very interesting that I noticed. Now, you know how we have a lot of bro trucks here?
Yeah.
You know, the ridiculous wheels and everything else.
The
They
wheels are sticking out.
Sticking out, and then tiny, very low profile tires, and they're
Yeah.
useless off road. I thought I'd see a lot more of those in California. I didn't.
You didn't?
No, I see a lot more of them here in Colorado, and that's a little alarming. So, Coloradans, you need to stop it. But but I saw like the best trucks ever in California. And to me, growing up in Southern California, there are places to off road, lots of great dunes and stuff like that you can get to and whatnot. But it was just, to me, I'm just looking around going, oh my God, these are the most amazing off-road trucks. And at the same time, I'm looking at 1 million Teslas running around there too. So it was an interesting mix. But my whole point of this was I got stopped. We get recognized, from time to time. Mm-hmm. And I got stopped by a guy driving a Tesla when I was at Disneyland in the parking lot. And he pulls up to me and he goes, when's the damn Tesla truck going to come out?
Ooh.
That was exactly his thing.
That was his opening line?
Yeah, and it's great to have my wife and kids there, too. And he didn't even introduce himself. He just pulls up and yells at me. And
well, I'm sure he meant it in the best way possible.
My daughter was going to bawl on him, too. She was just like, her fist was ready.
Yeah.
So I calmed everybody down, and I said, dude, Tesla doesn't tell us anything. They don't tell anybody anything. But what we do know is that they're testing. We do know that for a fact. And the good news is for you guys out there who are waiting for a Tesla truck, maybe it's coming this year. That's all I got. That's what I told him too.
Yeah, well, the latest news about this that I saw is that there's some, I don't know if it's official sneak peek or like real leaks, or if Elon Musk is like taking pictures from the factory in Texas. But there's a couple of images coming out from Texas that they're building the presses to build those truck bodies.
Right.
Out there, because he wants to build them out of stainless steel. And stainless steel is supposed to be very rigid, right, and really strong, but it also requires tremendous pressure to form it. Right?
It does. They're going to be pretty expensive trucks to build. Yeah. Now, the last thing I saw rear view, or side view mirrors and windshield wipers, 2 things he didn't want, and he has to back off and because of regulations.
Yeah,
has
absolutely.
To put on
so we think it's coming.
Yeah.
I mean, hopefully within this year or maybe 12 months.
Yeah, that's all we got on that. So, long story short, that was what it all boiled down to. But by the way, thank you all very much. In California, because that was a hell of a great trip, even though half the state is underwater.
Yeah, what is up with the weather over there? At first there's wildfires, then there's flooding. What's next?
Why do you think I moved to Colorado?
What's that, locust? Is locust?
Yeah, there'll be every plague will be out there. Yeah, it's California, man. And one thing about Californians, even though they complain and all these other things all the time, they are resilient, and so they'll deal with the earthquake. They'll turn right around and deal with the fire, deal with the mudslide, deal with rains, and then have drought for 6 years straight. So that's California. Go. Okay, let's get back to this. We have some Patreons that we wanted to talk about.
Yeah, speaking of shout-outs, we got to do 2 more shout-outs to William and another one to Steven Van Kempen for supporting us on Patreon.com. Patreon.com/TFL Car is our only page for all TFL studios.
That's right.
So we just created one location there. And it's also a great place for us to communicate. Like we always say, you can ask us questions, give us feedback. I don't have any questions from Patreon this episode, but we discussed at least one question last time. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you, guys.
And also, let's start talking about off-road trucks, and then I want to hit some news as well.
That sounds like a great idea.
So really, this episode is being kicked off by a question we received a week or 2 ago about the F-150 Rattler off-road package. So this has been kind of almost on the radar.
Rattler, Rattler.
Like the snake.
Okay.
I hope. I hope it's not like a child's Rattler toy. Rattle toy?
Keep going.
Oh, I'm sorry. That didn't work. Anyway, so the Rattler, like the snake, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
It's a new package that Ford introduced on their F-150s.
Right.
And it was, so we covered it plentifully last year as well in 2022. So they announced it. It's kind of based on an XL crew cab 4-wheel drive F-150, but it also has some cosmetic touches to it. So different wheels, different rear bumper, dual exhaust pipes, badging. And then they published the configurator, and I got an email immediately, where's the Rattler for 2023?
Right.
And turned out it was sold out.
No kidding.
Yes.
That is fast.
So, of course, Ford and many other manufacturers don't publicize how many, what the volume is, if it's 1,000, 2,000, or whatever,
Right.
trucks. But then we received a couple of images from you guys that they're on dealer lots now. But here's the question. When do you choose the Rattler versus FX4 versus Tremor versus Raptor? So that's kind of where it's coming from.
Yeah, sometimes these packages really are for appearance, and sometimes there are a couple advantages to getting them. And, I mean, they may be slim, but there are advantages in some cases. And we're going to cover a majority of those in this little list that Andre put together very carefully, actually.
Yeah, so the Rattler really, to answer your question, is based on the FX4. FX4 package has been in Ford trucks for decades, really.
Right, and in fact, the one that you used to own had the FX4 package as well.
Yeah, and they have this package on the midsize truck, the full-size truck, the heavy duties. Even the little Maverick has an FX4 package.
Right, so the FX4 package is one step above your base 4x4, F-150, F-250, whatnot, and also Ranger.
Yeah.
And what it gives you on top of that base 4x4 is a locking rear diff.
Yes.
That's probably the biggest thing. Slightly beefed up off-road suspension.
But not name brand.
But not name
so
brand.
It's basically Ford tuned.
Right,
Yes.
but it's a little beefier for off-roading and slightly more aggressive tires, I think you could say. Would that
Yes,
be fair?
and also some modes. So
additional modes.
Trucks are getting more digital all the time, right? So you may have an additional rock crawl mode that they didn't have before.
Right.
And also skid plates protection, right? Did you mention that?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, so usually additional skid plate would be thrown in.
Oh, and usually they'll put in a graphics package. I think a lot of those are, where it'll say FX4 on the side or something like that. But that's pretty much it. Now, I gotta say that I've equipped, because part of our job is to go online and equip these vehicles when we write up things and do videos. And I've equipped several Ford products with the FX4 package. And I've noticed that compared to a lot of the other guys out there, it's actually a really good value, especially with that locker. So it's a great value, but there are things that you may want to keep in mind. One of which I feel is that they never put on what I would consider to be adequate off-road tires. You have to go a couple steps further to really get those.
Yeah, and here's what the Rattler does. This is an image that Ryan, one of our viewers, Ryan Sheard, sent to us. Is that here's a Rattler truck. If you're watching this on YouTube, this is a Rattler truck at the dealership, and they do throw in a slightly more aggressive tire.
Yeah, and a wheel tire and wheel package.
Yeah, and the wheel is blacked out. So really, the Rattler package, like you said, it combines the FX4 goodies and kind of is available in a limited configuration, which is crew cab only.
Right.
And it's a little bit more appearance oriented.
It is appearance oriented, but there's a problem. Not all of you guys are gonna have this problem. If you're serious about off-roading, one of the things I never recommend is having dual rear exhaust shooting out the back because your departure angle suddenly can be affected.
But Nathan,
it looks cool. I know it looks cool. I think it looks cool too.
Yeah, I know.
But if you're going to go just as something as simple as fins and things in Moab, Utah, it's very possible that you could scrape that rear exhaust because of the bumper and whatnot. So keep that in mind if you're actually thinking about doing some light off-roading, that if you have dual rear exhaust, as opposed to the regular exhaust setup in a Ford F-150, which is off to the side, tucked in behind the tire, which is better for off-roading. Keep that part in mind. But in terms of looks, I think it looks really nice.
Yeah, I think who really made the dual exhaust pipes coming straight back really popular was Ram.
Yeah.
Because their Hemi trucks have had that for years and years. And of course, after that happened, Ford Raptor made it famous, right? For having those exhaust pipes sticking out the back.
You're absolutely right. But and then General Motors did their HDMI style ones.
Yeah, little ports.
That's what they look like to me out in the back. If you guys know what I'm talking about, then great. If not, then it's just the shape of the exhaust in GM products out the rear.
And here's and just one more thing I wanted to highlight, which is that trucks are getting more and more expensive because of
Which
inflation,
you guys obviously know.
other items. This particular F-150 XL crew cab 4x4 Rattler has a sticker price of $53,755. And this is with an EcoBoost. So this
Which
is
EcoBoost is that?
3.5.
Oh, it's the 3.5.
So
Okay.
so it's one of
It's
their
the
top
beefier engine.
engines.
Okay.
But still, it's over 53 grand. So you have to take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah, this is the tough part because I would look at that right now, considering the budgets that I look at and say, that's really bad. But the reality is that actually is not a horrible price considering what's out
Considering
there right
everything
now.
else.
Right.
Considering the other truck we want to talk about later in the show, which is the Raptor R, which is more than double this price.
That's exactly it. Let's move on, though, to other vehicles that are on this list, the starting point on the list, and that would be General Motors. General Motors right now, and they've had this for years and years and years, has the Z71 package. The Z71 package is a little bit different than the FX4 package on Ford. For one thing, it's a different type of rear locker. It's a mechanical rear locker that is completely hands-free. It does it all on its own. Essentially, what it'll do is it'll lock up after it detects spin. And we've used this on several vehicles with mixed results. I would say that it's a solid system. Okay, it does its job, but for those of you who cannot tolerate wheel spin, it can be an issue because in some cases it takes several revolutions for that one wheel to kick in or before the other wheel kicks in, and you have the actual rear end locking. And that can be a real issue on ice and snow, which we've had before. But when you're going off road, once you're willing to spin a little bit, it locks up and it goes. It does its job.
Yeah, and the reason I brought up a picture of a 2005 Chevy Tahoe, because my friend Destin, this is his dad's vehicle, and it is a Z71. So this brand has been around for decades once again.
Yeah.
Very similar to the Ford brand.
Yeah, it's a nice looking truck, by the way.
Yeah, and it's got a lot of miles.
I like the raised white letters on the tires.
And even now, the Chevy Tahoe and the Suburban are available in the Z71, but it's becoming its own trim, right?
Yeah.
So it used to be a package you added to something else, and now it's becoming its own vehicle, so to speak.
To a certain degree. Now, once again, like the FX4 package, you do get some upgrades. I believe you get slightly more aggressive tires. I believe you get at least a skid plate. And I think you do get a little bit more aggressive rate springs or shocks. But I'm not 100% sure what the new Z71 package has.
Yeah, and it kind of depends on the vehicle versus Silverado versus Tahoe versus Suburban and others. So you have to be kind of a little bit discerning as far as there. But if you want to go one step further, Z71, we'll talk about a little bit later, is the Trail Boss, right?
Yeah.
Which gives you a lift as well.
And some extra looks and everything else. That's, I think, a completely different package, which is why it's on the next level of this list.
Yeah. So let's talk about, so on the same level, we have FX4 Rattler, we added to this list, right? Z71, Ram Off-Road package has been around for also many, many years.
Yeah, it's not as popular, and I think part of the reason why is because of the Rebel.
Yeah, Rebel kind of changed the game, really.
Exactly. It was
really
one of the earlier ones for that in-between trim where you're looking at something that's got a lot more visual gravitas to it, right? But the Ram 4x4 off-road package, once again, is a step up from the base Ram four-wheel drive truck. And unlike the other guys out there are no mid-sized trucks for this thing to really, share any components with, so to speak, or anything else. It's its own thing, only on the Ram. But I believe you can get a similar package on the 2500s as well.
Yeah, you can. And it, once again, I would call it mild.
Yeah.
Once again, it's almost like a Z71, kind of a direct competitor for Z71.
I would agree.
And then Ram went and did something else for their light-duty trucks, for their full-size 1500s, is they created the backcountry package, which in my mind is kind of a Rattler competitor, because it adds a few visual cues, the blacked-out wheels, slightly more aggressive tires, of course, that bumper with dual exhausts, right?
Yep.
So I need to add the backcountry to our pyramid.
Yeah, so while he's adding the backcountry, I can tell you we've actually driven a few backcountry packages. I think that they're a little bit more comprehensive in terms of everything they give you, because you can feel it on the interior as well. It's a step up from your base truck. So there's something to be said about that. Ram has been really good, I think, about packages. And they've also been really anal about packages because they stretch it out, man. They just
really are kings of that.
They really are. I mean, there's 100 different packages to every 3 packages the other guys have.
And there are different color options.
Exactly.
There's, built to serve is their packages for to celebrate
the copper special edition,
armed forces, etc. So I mean, they really go all in. And recently they introduced the TRX Havoc. Remember?
Yes.
Which is actually a color.
It is a color, and we'll get to that when we get to the TRX, which is obviously near the top or at the top of our list. Now, the next vehicle on the list, once again, we're still at the very beginning, is the Nissan Pro 4X package. Now, the Pro 4X package works with both the Titan and the Frontier. And the Pro 4X is one of their top of the line things. They don't have a lot of additional trims on top of that. For them, it's kind of all or nothing, I would say. So you can get a basic 4x4 with both trucks, but then you go to the next level and you go to the Pro 4X package, and it's a really good package because you do get suspension, you do get armor, you do get a locker, and you get tires and wheels. And they're much better tires, I believe. They're the Dynapros.
Dynapros 82s.
82s.
Yeah. We actually have a Frontier in our loan fleet right now from Nissan.
Right.
Yeah.
And I really like the Frontier, by the way, if you didn't know that. Titan's a great truck as well. So getting this package, you get a lot of stuff with it. You get a completely updated interior and everything else. Definitely a couple steps, I think, ahead of what the FX4 and the Z71 and those packages are with all the stuff you get. However, that's as far as you go.
Yeah,
right?
and the reason why I would put it at kind of the main base level of this off-road pyramid is because the ground clearance. So that has been my issue with the Pro 4X. Like you said, I agree. It even has Bilstein shocks.
I know. It's
So
really
that
good.
has really good tuned suspension, but then you really use that front skid plate because that skid plate is running into obstacles.
With both trucks, too.
Yeah,
The approach angle on both the Titan and the Frontier
could be improved.
Could definitely be improved and should be improved. But one of the reasons why the front ends are so low is so they get slightly better mileage, because that's part of the deal, is that they have to compete with these other trucks, which are now having hybrids and all that other stuff. Now, another competitor in this class, and keep in mind, when we mentioned Toyota just recently came out with this Tundra, which is all new and insanely capable in certain ways, but it still has this package, but it's not quite the same as it used to be. This is the TRD off-road package, and once again, it works for both their mid-size truck and their full-size truck.
Yeah, the Tacoma has a TRD off-road package, and this is where people get a little bit confused because a TRD is overarching many different aspects of Toyota truck and also car divisions.
Toyota Racing Development.
Yeah, and they also have the sport version of TRDs, which is totally street-focused.
Exactly.
So we're not going to be talking about TRD sports.
No, and that's another confusing part, is that the whole TRD thing covers a lot. And now they're starting to do a lot of GR stuff, and you're going to see more of that in the future, by the way, with trucks in the future. GRs, their Gazoo Racing
division,
which is a whole different thing. Right now, what we're talking about is the TRD off-road package. That is their first level off-road package above the base truck, because you can get a base Toyota Tacoma, and I believe you can get a base Toyota Tundra as a 4x4, and then get to the TRD off-road package.
Yeah, and once again, you get specially tuned suspension, you get a rear locker now in the Tundra as well.
Which is great.
Because they used to have kind of this kind of limited slip system.
It wasn't kind of, it was a limited slip.
Yeah. So now you do have a locker, and Tacoma has offered the locker before,
yes,
even before the Tundra. And you know what? In my opinion, if you look at Tacoma specifically, that's probably the truck to get, because you could go to TRD Pro, which we'll mention a little bit later.
Right.
But I don't know. That's a lot of money. That's almost $9,000 more in some cases you're paying for the Pro versus the TRD off-road that already has a lot of off-road capability baked in.
Yeah, and when it comes, especially to Tacoma, I would say one step under Jeep, has more aftermarket and additional market components that you can slap onto it to make it more capable than almost anything else out there. It's remarkable how much stuff is out there for it. So in our case, both of us are kind of value-minded, so we see the TRD off-road package as a really good start, and more than enough for a lot of people out there who would be willing to spend a lot more money on the full TRD Pro package. And there's a lot of other components in between that you can get too, by the way, if you actually go online.
And what I'm really liking about all manufacturers now, especially within the last couple of years, they're offering more accessories from a dealership. A lot of them, well, most of them come with warranties, right?
Yes.
Because they're approved by the manufacturer. I'm talking about skid plates, suspension updates.
Oh, even winches in some cases.
Some bumpers and winches.
Yes.
So they're offering a lot more options, even for the basic trucks, which I love.
Yes, I do. I completely agree
Yeah.
with you. I wanted to say with that, for those of you out there who are not, let's say, mechanically inclined and really don't want a wrench on your own truck, but also want it to be protected, this is a really good way to go. If you have a dealer installed component that's covered by your warranty, it's a lot more expensive to do it that way. But for some of you people out there who just want to have that accessory put on the truck without worrying about it, that might be the way to go.
Also, like exhaust systems are now
Oh,
getting
yeah.
popular.
A whole bunch
because
of them.
GM is big on this now because they're offering performance exhaust systems, intake systems. They are expensive, way more expensive than aftermarket. But like you said, it's covered, it's kind of peace of mind, and it's been proven by the manufacturer to add a little bit of performance to your
Toyota
truck.
does that as well. Yeah.
With the
and-
TRD Pro exhaust systems.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to how about the next level?
Yes.
Not as many vehicles on this next level.
So let's move on to capability.
Yes.
Boom.
So now we're going to step up.
And also step up in price, step up in capability. So there's several vehicles on this kind of a level. Trail Boss AT4. So AT4 GMC is really this cousin to the Trail Boss in capability and equipment. Rebel, we mentioned the Rebel already.
Right.
And now we have the heavy-duty Rebel also entering the fray.
Right, and that's a totally different truck in my book.
Well, yeah, we need to discuss that a little bit.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
Okay, and also the TRD Pro now. Okay, so these are on the next level, and this is out of 6 levels, guys. So we're still working.
We're moving
on it.
up, yeah.
Yeah. So let's first go to the Trail Boss. The Trail Boss is a vehicle we have a lot of experience with because we actually owned one and had a really good ownership experience with that truck. The one we had was a 2000.
It was a 20.
It was
I
a
believe
20.
20, yeah.
And it had the 5.3 in it, but it also had the 10-speed automatic transmission. Not a whole lot of options, but it did have the Trail Boss package to it, which gave us a suspension lift, which gave us tires and wheels. It gave us, I think, a little bit of armor, right?
Yeah, but I wish GM would do better on the Trail Boss with armor. A lot of it is appearance as well.
Yes.
But now we have Rancho shocks, right? So on the previous level, we kind of have most of the suspension systems are manufacturer specific,
Right.
Not name brand shocks, for example. There's a couple exceptions. There's not, there's, for example, the TRD off-road trucks have Bilsteins.
Right.
But now this next capability has to do with the lift, I think, because that's the biggest differentiator of the Trail Boss. It gets a 2-inch lift.
And not only does it look better, but it does help for articulation. We actually put it to the test more often than not.
And it's a simple lift because it's using blocks in the back.
Right.
So it's not like its own, different leaf spring in the rear.
Unique A-arms and all that other stuff up front. Nothing
Yeah.
like that. This is a very simple lift, but it's an effective lift. It does the job, and at the same time, the ride quality is outstanding.
Yeah, and the 84 is a very similar truck, except in GMC clothing, a little bit more premium on the inside. And then, of course, there is a Rebel, which kind of changed the game. So the Rebel came out for light-duty 1500 Rams in 2019.
Right.
And we actually owned that truck, too.
We did own that truck, and it was kind of a love-hate relationship with that one, I would say. We beat up on it quite a bit. We also
We modified it, too.
Yes, with the suspension. I thought it was a really good truck, a really good first attempt at building this mid-level truck that kind of brought all the elements that most people really want in a truck to the factory, which was a lift, a better-looking vehicle, a more aggressive-looking vehicle. And what was cool is that Ram decided, okay, we're going to add a different hood, a different fascia, and everything else. And I thought it was really cool. I think Andre did as well. But it wasn't perfect.
Yes, and we built a whole project around it
Yes,
called
we
the
did.
Rebel Rouser. You can look it up on alltfl.com or our YouTube channels.
That's correct.
I don't want to focus on the Rouser part because it's something we did, right? We customized it, but
That had nothing to do with Ram.
I do want to mention this. I remember being at the launch event of the Rebel. This was in Detroit at their headquarters.
Yeah.
And I just say Detroit loosely. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's a large area.
Yeah.
I think it caught me by surprise and maybe some of the other competitors by surprise because the first thing that people said, ooh, is the Rebel a Raptor competitor, right? Because the Raptor has always been kind of this measuring stick. That
Yeah, it
everybody
established the segment, if you
Yeah.
think about it.
And Ram said pretty simply, no. It's just below the Raptor. And they never mentioned the Raptor in their presentation. They said, we want to build our own truck called the Rebel. And I was like, some people were disappointed, but I think Ram purposely found a new segment because look at what happened. Then Ford introduced the Tremor later,
Right.
right? And we'll discuss the Tremor next.
The Trail Boss came later
and
as
the Trail
well.
Boss, and then now we have a Silverado ZR2
Yep.
coming into the space. So I think Ram hit a point where some of the other competitors may not have totally found.
Right. They built a truck that wasn't as crazy expensive as a Raptor, but it was still very off-road capable, and it had the looks and the feel of something that was kind of premium, right? And that part I thought was extraordinary. It had a really nice interior for the time when it first came out. Still, I think, of an excellent interior. They managed to put a lot of value in this truck, and that is the point that this next section is all about. Value, not necessarily. I mean, none of these trucks really give you a whole lot more over the trucks are based on, but in many cases, a little bit more look and a lot more goodies that are like thrown into it. But there is a truck on here that does have a lot more capability, and that would be the one that you're looking at. If you can't see it, that is the Tundra TRD Pro.
And the TRD Pro brand in general, which now extends also to the Sequoia. I mean, the Sequoia TRD Pro has been around, but now they've redesigned the Sequoia. We recently tested it.
Right.
So the TRD
Great looking
Pro,
truck.
Yeah, but here's what Toyota, I think, is doing now with the Pro line. They're also taking it more premium.
Yes, they are.
Right, and it's reflected in the price. It can be eye-opening to see those prices on the next, the Tundra TRD Pros and the Sequoia TRD Pro, which is now mid $70,000 levels.
Right. But to be fair, you are getting a hybrid standard. So it's a twin turbocharged V6 hybrid with a 10-speed automatic transmission. That is just part of it. And then on top of that, then you get your suspension upgrade, your tire upgrade, your armor upgrade. I mean, all that stuff is part of that package.
Yeah, totally. So you're getting everything in one. So luxury, comfortable interior, and all the tech. All the tech that you could throw at the truck or an SUV, it's there. And of course, there's a 4Runner TRD Pro too, but 4Runner is a whole different story.
Yeah, we're not going to go into the 4Runner. That's a completely different animal.
But also, their engineering team always tells me whenever I ask about Pro, they talk about higher speed desert running or higher speed off-roading, not rock crawling. So they're tuning their TRD Pro suspensions for those higher speeds so they can cope with those, fast chatter or those bigger whoops, that you're going
Which
over.
is exactly what Toyota has been absolutely killing it at. And can we go into the news now? Because there's something that Toyota has recently done. So we're taking a little break from this before we go to the next level, but it's all about Toyota. And that is, for those of you who have not been paying attention to Dakar, the 2023 Dakar Rally was won, amongst other racers, because there's several different divisions, but with the car, technically, by Toyota. And Toyota won it.
Well, you have a full story on TFL Off-Road.
I do have a full story on TFL Off-Road.
Yes.
And if you scroll down just a little bit.
Okay.
Okay. Scroll up a little bit. Scroll up a little bit more.
What
Here
happened?
we go. Okay. So Nasser Al-Attiyah, and I probably completely screwed up that pronunciation, but he won his 5th Dakar race. Now that makes him the only person who's won more is Stefan Petterhansel, who's won like 18 or 16 or something like that. So he hasn't come close to him yet, but still he's the second winningest driver in Dakar history. And this is the second time that he's won back-to-back with Toyota. And it's the Hilux, which essentially is like an overseas version of our, Tacoma, sort of. And he absolutely killed it this year. Very consistent, excellent drive. But that's not all. Scroll all the way down to the bottom of the story.
Okay. I've heard his name pronounced also Nasser Al-Attiyah. So
And it might be
Al-Attiyah.
Yeah, and I apologize.
What is this?
What is that? That is the winner of the Classics division. So that is a Toyota. And for those of you who don't know, Dakar runs a Classics division now. They've been doing it for, I think, 3 years now, where they bring in trucks and cars and motorcycles that are 20 years old or older to race in this slightly separate race. It's in Dakar, but it's not part of the Dakar race. And the winner of that was driving a Toyota Land Cruiser.
Yeah.
And he won that division. It's a very different type of race. By all means, go online and look it up. But the point I'm getting at here is that Toyota's been killing it. And Toyota also won, I believe, the WRX championship as well. So off-road, Toyota has been absolutely kicking butt. However, most of the vehicles that you're seeing winning these things are desert runners. They're running either on hard road off-road or desert sand. They're not crawling up boulders. And I think that's part of Toyota's thing. It's like, look, this is what we do well. So going back to the Toyota Tundra we were talking about,
Yeah.
and that's
that's what it's tuned for. Yeah.
Precisamundo.
Yeah.
That's what I was trying to say.
So it's like win the race on Sunday, drive on Monday, or sell a truck on Monday.
Sell a truck on Monday, yeah.
So I mean, it's not quite the same mentality, but it is kind of the same mentality because the Hilux that won the Dakar, it's a custom built off-roader, right?
Yeah, it's not what you're going to be buying at the dealership. However, the Hilux is known as being a remarkably tough truck, as is the Tacoma here. And
the engineers are learning from this experience,
Exactly.
right? And they're putting it into their other production.
And GR Racing has their hands in all of this. And the more racing you're going to be hearing about in the future, a majority of that from Toyota is going to be GR Racing.
There's more news. Can we do a little news segment?
Yes.
Since we started there?
Yeah.
First of all, I want to tell you what happened to me yesterday with our friend Emmy Hall. So
Emmy
Hall was there at Dakar.
She's our sister from another mister.
Yeah.
She used to work at TFL for a couple of years, and she still hangs out with us and is willing to, slum it with us from time to time. One of the most capable automotive journalists out there, and also a proper race car driver.
Yeah, and she does a lot of desert racing as well.
She does indeed.
And so she texted me, I believe from Saudi Arabia somewhere, and she said,
"Yeah, she's still there."
She said, "You wouldn't believe it." By the way, she was also there covering the Audi story. So the Audi have a very sophisticated.
Yes.
Is it a plug-in hybrid or is it a hybrid system?
It's a hybrid system, a really, really super sophisticated Audi that unfortunately had a lot of accidents and problems during the race, but it was really fast. And if they can get some of that under control, they will be a huge force to deal with next year.
It's kind of the second year of that system.
Right.
And they're still quite complex, but they want to prove the electric component of racing, right?
That is correct.
So they're working on that as well. And she said she was talking to one of the drivers just locally, not in the race. And she said that driver knew TFL. Just kind of a random person she met in Saudi Arabia. So that was very special. Thank you, Emmy, for saying that.
I think that's just awesome when you told me that.
Also, some news. I wanted to mention about what's happening with some of the prototype shots.
Yeah.
So we've seen a few prototypes of the F-150 2024,
Yep.
including the new Raptor.
That is correct.
But small changes. So I would just want to say we don't have official word from Ford about what's happening for 2024 trucks, but it looks like they're updating some of the style, especially in the back, using some of the F-150 Lightning taillights, including on the Raptor. So if you're worried about the Raptor going away, 2023 being the last year for some reason of the Raptor franchise, no, absolutely not. The prototypes for next year are already out on the streets.
Right.
So don't worry about those. So that's a little bit of piece of news about the F-150.
Okay. Now, speaking of the F-150, maybe we should go to the next level and talk about the F-150 Tremor. Now we're on level 4. So now we're getting to trucks that are really starting to show their off-road cred. They have a lot more than just beefed up shocks. They have a lot more than just perhaps a rear locker. And in this case, the Ford F-150 Tremor, and also the F-250.
And now everything Tremor. They're tremorizing their entire truck lineup.
The Tremor, that's right, all the way down from
Maverick.
the Maverick.
No, the Maverick
which
is a
you
Tremor.
recently took off-road. The Tremor is a unique, especially on the F-150, a really unique trim because it gives you a lot. It's interesting that you didn't put the ZR2 next to the Tremor because I would argue that they're very close. But anyway, the Tremor is a very off-road capable truck.
Well, we can't argue. This is a podcast.
You're right about that. Roman wants us to argue more. All right. Well, anyway, let's talk about the Tremor a little bit and then move on to the Mojave, which we forgot to mention last time.
Yeah, we didn't touch on Mojave. So first of all, Tremor, like I said, I believe this was really Ford's answer to the Rebel line. And I think Of course, Ford came out swinging. They gave that truck a lift. Also, the appearance is different, right?
Big time.
Although the hood is subtle, so they didn't change the hood a lot. They did change it, but they did orange accents, right, throughout.
Oh, the grill? Oh, hell yeah.
The grill, the tow hooks, of course, the painted, which is our favorite thing,
Yeah.
or at least Tommy and I really appreciate that.
Right.
So they did another important thing. So rear locker is of course there,
Yes.
but that's not news. They also added limited slip front differential, which
Yes.
is a Torsen.
Yes.
And now that's a big deal because a lot of manufacturers are trying to go, and we'll talk about that next, to a brake distribution system that kind of stops one wheel from spinning. But you're using brakes, and it's not a mechanical device, and you're burning up your brakes at the same time.
Yes, well, there's pros and cons to that. But at the same time, you're not dealing with the extra drag and the extra weight of a mechanical locker or an electric locker.
Yeah.
So the benefit of having the brakes actually stop the wheel and creating a simulated locker, I guess you could say, which it'll work. We've seen them work. The benefit is you're saving weight, you're saving some complexity in doing
some
that.
Cost, maybe.
And some cost. But at the same time, you are wearing your brakes a little bit more. And then on top of that, it doesn't quite work as good as a proper locker. And I'm sure a lot of you guys would agree with that. However, when it comes to the trimmer, you get pretty much the best of both worlds. On top of that, you get that tank turn thing, which I forgot the name of it.
Well,
The dragging wheel.
The
drag
rear wheel drag. No, they call it trail turn assist.
Yeah, I
That's
think
the
it's really cool. It's almost
Yeah.
useless, but it's really cool.
Yeah, and actually now their Bronco has it.
Yep.
The Ranger. No, I don't think the Ranger has it. But they're kind of introducing that across the board in
Right.
a lot of their vehicles.
Well, we should explain what it is.
Yeah, it's pros and cons once again.
Mm-hmm.
So the Pro, it's a mode you should turn on, and it can work in both four-wheel drive, high or low. While four-wheeling, and it's assumed that you're on a loose surface.
Mm-hmm.
So don't try it in your Walmart parking lot. I wouldn't recommend that too
It
much.
would be pretty funny if you did.
I mean, you could still use it, but
But we should explain what it is.
so now you engage the mode,
Right.
and you turn the wheel, and you start to accelerate, and you hear the system come on because it's kind of an anti-lock brake. You can hear that, and it basically wherever you turn, it just breaks
That inside wheel.
inside rear tire,
Right.
and basically becomes a pivot. So you're now almost pivoting your vehicle.
Think of it as an anchor that you just threw into the water. And as you're making your turn, that anchor kicks in and will help drag you around that corner that much better, theoretically. The thing is that it really does depend on the surface. I got it to work really well once, but
and also your aggressiveness on the accelerator depends.
It
That's-
depends.
It depends. Yeah.
yeah, but the idea behind the system is really cool. And the fact that they actually incorporated that into this tremor, I think is a hell of a good idea.
But it should be used judiciously. I would say
Yeah.
don't like overuse the system because the other thing is tread lightly. Right.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of trails, especially in the Rocky Mountains and other regions. You can kind of tear up some of those areas if you keep dragging your tires.
Yeah.
So use it. It could be useful on a switchback where
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah.
A sandy switchback that's really, really tight, it might actually get you out of trouble where you don't have to go back and forth 3 or 4 times. It might work. But it's one of those things, once again, where it's just sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Not based on the system itself, but based on the terrain that you're on. So,
and some other vehicles like the Land Cruiser previous generation had that system. So
Right.
So multiple manufacturers are now experimenting with that system.
right. I'm just thrilled that Ford's doing it. Now, let's move on to something that is crazy off-road capable, but was built specifically for something a little bit different. And that is the Jeep Gladiator Mojave.
Yes.
Now, you may have noticed we didn't mention the Gladiator and the other 2 levels. You guys already know that the Gladiator comes standard as a 4x4 open diffs. And then you work your way up from there, and there's various levels, obviously. The Rubicon we will be talking about later, but the Mojave is a very interesting trim because it really was built for desert running with a vehicle with solid front and rear axles. So it's a really interesting idea.
Yeah, and they launched it a couple of years ago, right before COVID. In fact, 3 years ago now, right? They announced it, and they made kind of a big deal out of it because the Rubicon name is synonymous with off-roading. I mean,
Right.
not just because there's a trail named Rubicon, but because Jeep Rubicon is so capable.
Right.
Period. So the Mojave, like you said, like does not have a front locker, has slightly different suspension,
Right.
maybe a little bit higher in the nose, so it has more clearance.
I think it has different tires than the Rubicon as well, if I recall.
Yeah, and just meant, once again, it's kind of like the TRD Pro. It's meant for faster running through the desert. Also great for potholes.
Yeah.
We found out.
Yeah. Yeah.
So actually, all of these trucks are great for potholes because those suspensions can actually
Beefier suspensions and better tires to go through those damn things.
Yeah. So, but when I remember Jim Morrison, the head of Jeep North America, really launched this brand. I think you may have been there as well.
I was there.
But it didn't kind of pan out because I don't hear people talking about Mojave very often. Do you hear
In the
about
Jeep
this?
community, I do. And the reason I think that a lot of people talk about them is because they're kind of hard to come by. They are pricey.
Oh, yeah.
The bottom line is that everything, I mean, we're talking about a $20,000 premium, really. Anything that you buy that's Jeep is essentially going to be overpriced as it is, but it's a solid off-roader. And the funny part is the guy that I met in Moab last year who had a Mojave package, what did he do? Put on an electric front locker.
Oh. So he just negated his Mojave.
He just
not negated.
Not negated, but it's just like
turned it into a Mo Ruby.
Mo Ruby, yeah. And I was like, okay, bro, yeah, that's great. So he found a reason, but it's a great package. There, I believe, is additional articulation because it's really the suspension that's the deal. And the suspension really was built for off-road chatter, going over washboard, going over dunes and everything else, being able to really cushion the vehicle if you jump it. So it takes that Gladiator and really makes it into a lot more capable truck for that specific type of terrain.
And also, the reason why I put it on the same level as the Tremor and higher than other trims we just discussed is because those shocks. They're Fox and they're remote reservoir. And it's very, very, very capable. So they're resilient to heat.
Yes.
Fast off-road
and
running.
Abuse. They can take a lot of abuse.
So that's why it's there.
Yeah, precisely. Now, there's another vehicle that he added to this list, but there's a question mark on it, and that is the Toyota Trail Hunter package. For those of you who watched our coverage over at SEMA, Andre covered this ad nauseum, and unfortunately, we don't have much from that because this.
Are you calling my coverage inconsequential?
No, quite the opposite. I'm saying that your coverage was one of the only ones out there that was comprehensive, but nobody else could back it up because Toyota's not giving us anything
it was a
else.
concept. That was the issue.
Yeah, it's a concept, but come on. I mean, that's one step away from production.
So Trail Hunter brand is launched. We don't know a lot of production implications for this, but we do know what Toyota said. So they called the Trail Hunter more overlandy, meaning, but also they mentioned slower off-roading. So maybe this is their answer to the likes of the Rubicon.
Possibly.
Because the Rubicon is really kind of the crawly, slow-speed rock crawler. I just want to bring up an image of the Toyota Trail Hunter.
So while he's doing that, the Trail Hunter looks like it'll go throughout the entire lineup. That's including the upcoming new Tacoma, most likely. I don't think it's going to go on this current Tacoma, personally. But the best image is right here, and that is showing it on the Toyota Tundra. And you can really see the differences just by looking at it. Is there any difference in the bumper? I'm kind of curious about that.
Well, yeah. So they're adding kind of steel bumper inserts. So right now their bumpers, even on their Pros, are the composite or plastic bumper covers.
Covers that go
right?
over steel.
And of course skid plates are underneath it.
Right.
But now on the Trail Hunter they're showing full steel, I believe it's steel, front bumper sections and rear bumpers as well.
Right.
It's basically accessorizing your truck with manufacturer-approved components, once again. But they also talked about increased payloads for heavy equipment like tents and roof racks, lights, bigger tires, right? So we don't know exactly what that means if they're going to add maybe a mechanical locker up front Who knows?
Which would be epic.
Right? But the new bumper does have tow hooks. So
That's huge.
So,
It's been a huge pet peeve of mine. I know some of you guys think I beat it to death, but it really is an issue I have with it. So aside from the tow hooks, it definitely looks like it has a lift.
Yeah.
It has more aggressive looking wheels and very aggressive looking tires. That looks like the control arms are different. The suspension altogether has been
skid plates are a little bit
updated.
different. Yes.
Yeah.
So it's a serious thing they're doing. Once again, we don't know how they're going to productionalize this yet. So we don't quite understand every component of the Trail Hunter. That's why I put a question on it, because
Right.
we don't know how it falls. Where
But it looks like it's going to hit this line that we're talking about with the Tremor and the Mojave.
somewhere within this line.
Yeah.
And also, we don't know how much it will cost, because I'm assuming it'll be the highest priced Tundra off-road truck potentially. I asked them, I said, is this above TRD Pro? And Toyota said it's kind of a brother to the Pro. So they see the Pro as the fast off-roader, and they see the Trail Hunter as a little bit slower, long distance off-road runner.
Which is really interesting to see whether or not they're going to be able to make this happen. Nothing against Toyota, but they can be vague from time to time. But we should be hearing a lot more about this truck in the near future. Now, we should probably go up to number 3 on our list. And this is where things start getting really super beefy, but also there's a huge question mark about one of these trucks.
Yeah, so once again, we are way up now in our capability again. On this level, I've put several trucks, a ZR2, a GM, AT4X, which is kind of a newish brand from GM.
Right, but I mean, that's the GMC version of the ZR2 in my book, which has more luxury, but essentially the same capability.
I've put Rubicon up here because we got to talk about, of course, Jeep and Wranglers and Gladiators. And then I've added Rivian. We haven't discussed Rivian in the space before,
Right.
But we've driven more of them. Like now we have experience with the R1S and the R1T truck,
Right.
and the SUV. And I would kind of add Rivian in this space.
I personally speaking, I would have kept them for number 4, actually, going up against the Tremor and the Mojave.
What, the Rivian?
Yeah, I
Okay.
think I don't think they're quite as capable as the ZR2 and the AT4X. They don't have the suspension capability for articulation. They don't. I mean, they have pretty good ground clearance, but they don't have that hardcore armor. And the bashability, I think they're a little bit more delicate, to be honest with you.
Well, we haven't really super bashed them, right? Because
Yeah, but some
they
guys
are
are-
electric,
Right.
And they are supposed to have really good belly protection because that's where the battery lives.
Exactly.
But I don't want to find out myself.
Neither do. And I think most owners don't, because these things start at what, 80?
Yeah, so I don't want to land it on a pointy rock and see what happens.
Right. So the other vehicles that are on this list, though, let's talk about them real quick. The ZR2, we recently owned one, and it's still one of my favorite trucks out there. Even compared to the Raptor and the TRX, I think that the ZR2 1500 that we had was one of the more logical trucks out there, because not everybody needs 1,000,000 horsepower or a $100,000 truck to do serious off-roading. The ZR2 does everything. It just doesn't do it quite as fast as the Raptor R and the TRX. We'll get to those in a minute. This is once again my perspective. Andre may be different. Front locker, rear locker, super capable off-road package with the DSSV spool valve, suspension system, armor, very, very logical setup, and a big beefy V8 that does not have a turbocharger, that does not have a supercharger, but that does give you decent all-around capability. And of course, these things are considered pretty reliable. So in my book, a very good trade-off within that segment.
And ours started, there's not a lot of options when you
No,
get a
there's
Silverado ZR2 because it's similar to what TRD Pro is.
Right.
It's kind of adding some luxury features, including off-road features. Ours was about $72,000, I believe, when we bought it a year ago,
Right.
almost a year ago. But once again, so it's in that $70,000 territory. The GMC is a bit more expensive, the AT4X.
But it gives you more luxury.
More luxury,
And
of
more
course.
gizmos, too, I think.
Yeah, GMC talk about, the nice headliners,
Yeah.
and the soft massaging seats.
I like that.
All that stuff. But AT4X was interesting. They launched in 2022 on the Sierra truck.
Right.
And then for 2023, we did recently a story about this. They, one of my complaints was the approach angle, because they left the AT4 bumper on the AT4X truck but now they are using AEV bumpers across the board, which offer better approach angle and also bashability because
Yes.
those are steel bumpers.
Proper steel bumpers.
So I think they're raising their game once again. So that's really cool. I think AT4X. And now it's spreading, right? So now they're going to have the Canyon AT4X.
Right.
And then the rumor is, well, not the rumor, they announced the heavy-duty AT4X and the heavy-duty ZR2 are coming. We just haven't seen them yet. So we'll do another story about this, judging the heavy-duty trucks, right? Because we mentioned the Rebel heavy-duty, we mentioned the Tremor heavy-duty, but I think it deserves its own show later on.
Yeah, those are just such, and right there with the Power Wagon too, I'd say too.
Yeah.
That's just very different. Because I know you guys are asking about the Power Wagon. You know it's one of my favorites, but I think it goes in a different division because it's a heavy-duty truck.
I have a message for you from one of our viewers.
Yes.
It's on Instagram, I believe. So they wanted you to be aware that somebody has taken a mostly stock Power Wagon through Hell's Revenge. And I don't know if it was a white truck. I don't know if you noticed some of that.
Yeah, I went through the hot tub.
Yeah. So, and it'll climb the escalator and it climbed all the obstacles.
Yeah,
so.
it's a beefed up version of the Power Wagon, and it's a remarkable truck.
But I was being told it was mostly stock. I don't know if I got the wrong information on
some
that.
Some of the, I don't know, it looked like it had a
It
lift
looked like
on
the
it.
tires
yeah,
are
the tires
different,
are bigger
or
too,
the
for sure.
wheels and tires are.
Yeah, I can almost guarantee that. Still, really, really cool stuff. Now, the Rubicon is on this list as well, and the Rubicon, of course, is the Gladiator. Gladiator Rubicon is now a step up because we are talking about a vehicle that has serious armor, serious suspension, front and rear lockers, upgraded tire and wheel package. Is it a standard winch? I don't know for sure. I know it is on the Power Wagon, but
No, the bumper can accept it.
Can accept it.
Yeah, it's like a Wrangler, basically.
Okay.
Yeah.
But altogether, a very, very capable off-road truck, and for a while, the most capable off-road truck in its class. I am curious to see how the next ZR2 Colorado competes against that. Rumor has that I might know somebody who might be getting one. So the Rubicon really does belong on this list. I don't think the Rivian really belongs.
So the
here.
Rivian, you would like to put the Rivian next to the Tremor and
right,
Mojave.
and the Mojave,
Well,
exactly. Because I just don't see that articulation. It just can't do the suspension system.
I could argue with you. I mean, I could argue a little further because the Rivian has 4 motors.
Yeah.
And yes, I mean, Tommy has been researching this with his slip tests, right? And the Rivian is, the Rivian, the negative is the weight, right? The Rivian electric trucks are quite heavy.
Yes, they are.
As all electric vehicles are. But the 4-motor system allows it to be quite precise with its off-road system. And also, it has air suspension, so you can jack it all the way up.
Yeah, but once you jack it up, then you lose your articulation.
And comfort.
Yes,
to some level.
And it's rock hard.
And comfort.
And you were talking about Emmy Hall.
Yeah.
She drove one of those in a race. And one of
at
the
the
issues,
Rebel Rally,
yes,
right?
at the Rebel Rally, and articulation was an issue for her as well. So, and weight. So, it's really good. Don't get me wrong. I would own one in a heartbeat if I could afford one, but I don't think it belongs up at that higher level. I think it's a mid-level in terms of its off-road capability. Now, you put the serious tires on there and change the suspension, valving around a little bit, maybe it would go higher. Speaking of higher, should we go up to this next level?
Yeah. So the next level, Raptor has been king, of course, until 2021 for many reasons. But then, of course, the TRX showed up. But on the next level, I would put the Raptor, and I'm not talking about the R. I'm talking about the standard EcoBoost twin turbo.
Are you talking about the 37?
Yes, I would put the 30s.
Because that's kind of unique.
I put the 37 in the same realm.
Okay.
On the same level.
Because for those of you who don't know, there's really 2 Ford Raptors out there, F-150 Raptors. There's the regular F-150 Raptor, which is, of course, what he's talking about. And what I was talking about is the 37, which is a Ford Raptor, but they actually upgraded a few things in the rear suspension and actually where the rear tire goes, the extra tire, in order to make room for 37-inch tires.
Yeah,
and
from the factory. And it's not even a dealership installed item.
It's a factory. Yeah, but I mean, they really did have to do a lot of engineering to make that happen, which is why I like to consider it unique. However, I would agree that both of those do belong on this level, which is the second level from the very top. And another one that he put on there, but I think there's a little bit of a question mark, is the GMC Hummer EV, which we own.
So this is a hard one. So first of all, let's wrap up the Raptor really quick.
Yes.
Raptor, third generation, I think they keep improving it. We could argue that maybe some of the styling has been a little bit conservative on their part.
I would like a
redesigning.
lot more to say. You know, big
But
arrows saying I have a
but
Raptor.
I drove the 37 package, which sits taller.
Yes.
It's just more commanding position. You're less worried about hitting obstacles because you have additional ground clearance.
Correct.
You still have protection. So the Raptor 37 really is really high on my list. So now,
I would agree with you, by the way, on that.
so now it's almost in that TRX zone, and we can talk about TRX in a minute. The Hummer. So on paper, the Hummer is amazing.
On paper, it is.
Other than its weight, because when you look at the weight specification on the Hummer,
Over 9,000 pounds, and the one we own is 9,450 pounds?
yes,
Yeah.
so it's almost it's heavier than a dually diesel.
It's heavier than some school buses.
Well, no, I wouldn't go that far.
I would.
Okay, maybe a short bus.
A short bus?
Okay, but Roman has so we upgraded our Hummer from the factory. They say you could go to the dealership and accessorize a Hummer EV with 37s, which we did.
Yep.
Which made the truck, in my opinion, more proportional, more. It should have come like that from the beginning.
I would agree with you. It looks a lot more like like a Hummer really should. Those big tires and the wheels look great, and it looks really good. However,
Roman has had a mechanical issue or two in Moab once again.
this is the second time that this vehicle's really let us down, and I won't go into details because you really should listen to the podcast
And Roman
and
will
also the video.
and also Roman has a full video about this.
Right.
And I wasn't. You and I weren't there.
We weren't there, but we got to hear the phone call. He was not having a good day. So this vehicle is a moonshot in many ways in terms of the idea of it, which is an all-electric vehicle that can do serious off-roading. However, some of the execution seems to be a little glitchy. I think I can simply say that.
yeah.
Which is why, even though it's up there with the Raptor in terms of on paper how crazy capable it can be, the fact is that in practice, I don't think it's up there with the Raptor, and I think you agree with me.
Well, here's what elevates the Hummer to almost the very, very top for me is the four-wheel steering.
Yeah.
And I
You can
mean
go
it.
10 degrees in the rear, which is remarkable.
I mean it. It changes the game for how maneuverable a truck like this can be. And I wish the Raptor had four-wheel steering.
I do
I
too.
mean, it's that good.
Yeah.
But we've had issues. So, for example, air suspension, and I experienced this myself on the Hummer. Sometimes the compressor may overheat if you use it too much.
Gee, I wonder why.
Going up and down, lifting 9 million pounds.
Exactly.
And then we had a front differential problem. Oh, sorry.
Locker.
I'm calling it the differential.
It's not a diff.
It's actually the motor itself. I mean, because it's a three-motor system.
So there's two in the back, one in the front.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the front motor, once again, had some sort of air code, and it was inactive. So Roman was in two-wheel drive for a lot of his off-roading trips.
While he was in the middle of an off-road, on
Trail.
an ORV trail, basically.
Yeah.
But once again, we won't go into details because you really need to listen to his detail about it and also watch the video because he's actually going to show you what happened. But this isn't the first time we've had failures with this vehicle. And I think it has to do with it's a first-year vehicle. And, there are glitches
And
with
it's quite complex, very complex.
extraordinarily complex, and I think that's the other problem with it.
Yeah, so that's for that reason it's kind of dropping a level or two.
Right.
It could have been at the very, very top of this capability pyramid, but it's dropping down because of some of its mechanical issues.
Okay, now let's talk about the two top guys.
Yeah, so TRX arguably, and I think you can argue with us on this too.
We owned one.
We owned one for a year and a half. I think we didn't want to sell it. Roman had a death grip on the steering wheel.
So do all of us. Everybody here, we kind of tried to petition Roman saying, listen, can we just sell off body parts and keep it?
Yeah, let's sell everything else. Just keep the TRX.
What we have to do, unfortunately, is that when we buy these vehicles, like what we did with this Hummer, is we hold on to it, but then we sell it, in some cases, even for a little bit of a profit. But for the most part, we're just kind of folding it to the next vehicle because you guys do not want to watch a million videos about the same truck. You want the next new truck. So we'll bring in some other new ones into our fleet. So that's what we had to do eventually with the TRX. In fact, I think the TRX led to the...
Well, it led to the Hummer.
yeah, exactly.
ironically enough.
which is a real shame.
But the TRX, so here's the 3 levels of a super truck, right? We've attached that name to the Hummer before. We've attached this name to TRX and the Raptor. But the super truck has to have 3 elements.
Okay.
It has to be visually unique.
Yes.
And the TRX does okay job, you know. It's
I think it looks fantastic.
It's a little bit stealthy in some areas and also great in others. It has to have, the second thing is power. It has to have unique power, and the TRX delivers with a Hellcat.
Indeed.
And it has to have suspension, and TRX delivers it. It does have a wide body. It does have that capable suspension. It has Bilstein shocks, which are adjustable, right? Actually, semi-actively adjustable. Right? It has all those things.
Oh, it does.
And that's why it's at the top or near the top of this list. It also has a high price.
It does indeed. Now, initially, they started off in the low 70s, technically speaking, on paper, but that's no longer the case.
Yeah, it's now like 84 grand.
Good luck getting
for
one
the
of those.
base one.
Yeah, good luck finding one of those.
And we had the base truck with a couple of packages like for towing. Ours was like 77 grand. So even ours was quite, expensive for that time. But now the base TRX, and I use base in quotes, right? It already has that 702 horsepower. It has, all those features.
Yeah, off-road mode,
but it has the nicest. It does not have the nicest interior or
Right.
keyless entry or some other items.
That is correct. Now, the thing about super trucks in my book, and there's only 2 of them that exist in my book, once again, because we dropped the Hummer a little bit until they fix some of these issues. It has to be stupid fun. I'm not talking about the type of fun where, I can have a little bit of fun going through the dunes. I mean, like, oh my God, I could kill myself by accelerating too much because this will jump 80 feet over this dune and I will set off not only the airbags, but crunch it in half. That type of crazy power. And for a while, the TRX was really the only truck that made me feel that way. And that was until Andre told me about the Ford Raptor R.
Yes. So finally, a lot of us have been waiting for this V8 powered, proper factory Raptor, and Ford delivered. And actually, I just heard from my buddy Thomas here in Denver. I believe his Raptor R is on a train.
Oh, great.
Actually being delivered to Colorado.
It could pull the train.
It could technically pull the train too. But you talked about that crazy, I need to update my will type of power.
Yeah.
I experienced it on the first drive of the Raptor R.
I remember seeing the images, and I hated
Did you see
for
my
it.
eyes?
I did
Remember?
see that, yeah.
They were kind of popping out.
Andre's eyes will bulge out from time to time when things start to, when the S starts going down. That was Andre. It was great. So definitely watch the video where he's in the dunes.
Yeah,
right?
Silver Lake in Michigan.
That's right,
Which
yeah.
I've never been at, and I was really enjoyed that area.
It's a small area, but it's still pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a small, but a lot going on in a very small amount of space.
Exactly.
Which is really awesome. But here's the thing. So they put basically the Predator engine in this F-150 Raptor.
Explain the Predator engine.
Predator engine was born really from the GT500 Mustang.
That is correct.
Right? So it's got a supercharger. It's a V8. It's in this case, it has 700 horsepower.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a big, huge controversy. The TRX is 702 and the Raptor R is 700. Why didn't they go 703? They say because they focused on off-road performance, not drag race speeds. But we will drag race one.
Oh, hell yeah.
Very soon.
We have friends who own TRXs, so we'll be able to get our hands on. In fact, even modified TRXs if we wanted.
Yeah, so we have access to some TRX trucks. We will soon have access to Raptor R. And
there's an important caveat here.
Yeah.
And I've already pronounced my love for the TRX. We love the TRX. We've had the TRX. However, I do acknowledge, despite the fact I'm the fattest person at TFL by far, that lightweight helps immensely off-road no matter what you're doing. Actually, it helps no matter what you're doing in terms of performance or even economy. And Ford has managed to make the Raptor R a lightweight truck by comparison. So there is a major difference between the two in terms of weight, which means that performance, not necessarily acceleration off the line, but off-road performance could benefit the Raptor R. Really the only way to ascertain that. The only way to really figure this out is to go back-to-back off-road with the two of these trucks, which we will be doing in the near future.
And also drag racing them for fun.
Hell yeah.
That's why we do it. Yeah,
That's
fun.
what we do.
It's about fun. And this is what a super truck that costs $109,000 does.
That's so painful, though.
So that's another painful item of this. What they did with the Raptor R is they loaded it with every feature. So it almost comes one way.
Right.
So the only option you could put on it is the panoramic sunroof and the tailgate step.
Right.
I believe. Oh, and the bedliner. Funny enough, it's an option.
Go figure.
Just throw the bedliner in there.
Yeah, well, maybe they're doing that because of weight. I mean, personally speaking, the panoramic sunroofs, those things are pretty heavy.
Yeah.
There's actually a lot of weight, and some people don't want them.
Yeah, and some people don't want them.
Yeah, I could dig
actually,
that.
we had the TRX without the panoramic.
That's right.
sunroof.
That was an option.
And I don't think we ever missed one, or at least I didn't.
I mean, I think they're cool for a minute, but I'm not one of the people who.
You know what it's cool for? Like impressing friends, like taking them into a canyon and showing them the mountains above you.
Right.
Or going through like a downtown area and looking up and like wowing at surroundings, right?
Right. Or especially if there's a sliding glass panel, being able to open up all the windows and having a little bit of an open air experience, I think that's cool too.
But other than that, it's just added weight.
Right.
And they managed to make the Raptor R just about 6,000 pounds with all the luxury features that it has and all the technology
Which
and all the
is way under what the TRX.
TRX starts. The base TRX, I believe, according to the spec sheet, is about 6,350.
Right.
And if you option the TRX up, that weight increases.
Right.
So really, the Raptor R has like a 400-pound advantage, maybe more.
Yeah, give or take. Yeah.
So that's a big advantage. That's two dudes.
One and a half dudes.
Okay.
Right here.
But still, that's a big advantage.
It is a huge advantage, and that's kind of my point. So I'm very curious to see how the two compete against each other. I have a feeling that the TRX is going to be like a brute, kind of like bringing a shotgun to a knife fight, but that the Raptor will be a little bit more like a scalpel, and it will be able to kind of carve around.
Sniper rifle?
Or sniper rifle, perhaps. Something that can really go around and be very exact about its movements and be lighter on its toes. But once again, we haven't driven both back to back yet, but we've driven one and we've driven the other, we being Andre. So we're going to find out in the near future. But they are really the number one on our lists.
And the Raptor R is on 37s. So the TRX does not have a 37 factory package.
No, it doesn't. Although there's an awful lot of owners who've already done that.
I know. And some owners went above and beyond, as we know. But the Raptor R, I would put it near the top because of that ultimate, oh my goodness, fun super truck experience. But more to come. Right?
Yes.
More to come. So hopefully this helps you a little bit to navigate the space of off-road trucks. We talked about a lot of things. Suspensions, traction is very important.
Yes.
Tire selection is very important.
Yeah, and I know that so many of you are probably thinking, well, you know what, I'm just going to replace the tires anyway, and you would be right. However, that's $1,000 easily.
It's
right?
an expense. And what I really love, what more manufacturers are doing, including GM, I announced I'm buying a Colorado, so Trail Boss.
Yes.
So that was announced publicly. So thank you for your support. But I was able to, from the factory, choose my tire.
That's huge.
Sometimes manufacturers push a tire on you.
Right, as part of the package.
Yeah, but no. The Trail Bus Colorado I ordered, I got with Goodyear Territory MTs. And it was like a $400 option, which is relatively affordable, other than me getting the truck, going to aftermarket, swapping tires, paying,
which costs a lot more money.
I don't know, $1,500.
Yes, up to
to get some really good tires.
Right.
But I did it from the factory, which is great.
Right. So something to keep in mind, guys, if you're looking at trucks. Well, anyway, I think we may have run a little bit past our time, but
we were passionate, I think, in this one.
We were passionate indeed. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Stay tuned. A lot more coming. Remember, a lot of stuff with Roman's adventures with the Hummer coming up. You need to watch those videos.
Yeah, and also just next week, it's Barrett Jackson auction.
Oh, yeah.
So stay tuned. I have some coverage from Barrett Jackson.
Are you going to get drunk like a lot of the other people who bid on these things?
Of course not.
Okay.
I'm always professional. You know
you
me.
are indeed. If I was there, I'd be hammered.
And also, we have quite a few projects happening, including our Trail Hunter series, which are Rem Cummins truck, which we were building into an overland rig with Alucab and Juniper Overland.
Right.
And so stay tuned. We have big updates coming on this.
All right, guys. Have a wonderful week.